right, so now let's move on to our next. We have a panel, and the panel is Reinventing the Remote Workforce. And Brea Starmer is going to be our panel moderator. She's just a rock star. And so even her bio starts out with, what if the working world enabled us to have great impact doing especially work that we love, right? In the space we have available. And her whole piece is around creating a talent market shift. And I love that. She's CEO of Lions and Tigers. And so I can't wait to hear what you have to say and what you talk about with the panelists. Thanks, Brea. Nice to see you. Hey, by the way, what is your word of intention for this year?
Boy, it should be grace for all that we, especially I'm a mother of 3 young kids under 6. So let it be grace.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm just going to lift you up. Grace. I'm going to send you as much grace as I can. Okay. Thank you so much for moderating. See you.
Awesome. Thanks, Patty. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to see you and to be here with you. It's really such a pleasure. We are going to dig in to this fascinating topic about the remote workforce and really where we're headed. Boy, those were some really inspiring words from Pamela. I especially loved her thinking about leaving behind the workforce of the past and building this new future. This is more human, more holistic. That was really kind of what I needed to hear, to be honest. So I would love to bring up this panel because we have some incredible thought leaders who are with us today to talk about what they're seeing, what they're building in their organizations. So I'd love to introduce my fellow panelists up here on stage with us. Okay, let's get them all up here. Perfect. We've got some folks joining us. Hi, Elena. Hi, Jillian. I want to make sure that we get our full group here up on stage. So what we're going to do as we welcome the panelists here today, the way that we're going to structure this is we're going to do a little bit of quick intro. I'm going to ask everyone to share sort of what they're fighting for. What are they passionate about in the world? And then we're going to dig into some really critical, big hitting questions. So let me start just so that I can sort of set the tone. So as Patty said, my name is Brea Starmer. I am the founder of a company called Lions and Tigers. We are a courage brand. We come alongside leaders who want to think about their talent strategy to really harmonize and build these workplaces of belonging between their in-house teams and their outsourced talent through Lions and Tigers, building everyone to work in their highest and best use. I am fighting for flexibility in the world because data shows that flexibility proves the biggest inclusion and impact for our businesses heading into this new world of work. So I would love to introduce our fellow panelists here. I am going to start with Jillian, if you would mind introducing yourself and tell us what you're fighting for.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brea. And hi, everyone. Super happy to be here with you today. My name is Jillian Alberico. I'm a managing director in Accenture's talent and organization practice. Within that practice, I lead our North America insurance cloud engagements from a talent and workforce perspective. And one thing I'm incredibly passionate about and fighting for, both in my day-to-day job and outside of it, is for digital inclusion across the workforce and the labor market, to prepare people for jobs of the future and offering them equitable opportunities to do so. So looking forward to the conversation today.
I love that, Jillian. Digital inclusion, we're going to dig into that for sure. Elena, let's go to you next. Can you do a beautiful introduction of yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Elena, and I'm a CEO and founder of InSpace. We help companies transform their existing office spaces into hybrid ones through an enterprise SaaS platform. At the same time, they can save up to 50% on rent and improve collaboration by 65%. And I feel really, really passionate about making sure that as many people as humanly possible will have access to an ability to choose where they want to work, if they want to work from home, if they want to work from the office, where they want to work inside their offices based on their personal preference and their style of work. And I think it's something that was considered a privilege only for top managers before the pandemic. Now it's getting more and more accessible to more people, and hopefully this trend will continue. And me at InSpace, I'm just trying to make sure that as many people as possible will have access to the same conditions, same work environment.
I love that. Democratizing access to your work environment. That's a really powerful concept. Ronit, let's go to you next. I know you've been with Women in Cloud and on a number of panels before. Thank you for being with us today.
Really excited to be with everybody today. I'm Ronit Brea. I'm a VP of Engineering in Smartsheet. Smartsheet is an online platform that allows us to manage our work in a collaborative way. And I'm really passionate about empowering people to do work wherever they are, because making it easy and fun and inclusive to do work wherever you are is what empower all of us to be this force multiplier, contributing to our teams, organization, our companies, and even our countries to be successful.
I love that. Your product, of course, brings people and technology together for more efficiency, which is like such a beautiful promise. So I'm excited to dig in with you. We have another panelist, Lisa. I'm hoping that we can snag her and bring her on stage at some point, and hopefully she'll join us here in the next 30 minutes. Lisa is the Senior Vice President in the provider industry solutions within NTT Data Services. So hopefully she'll join because she has a really incredible perspective in the healthcare industry, especially, which I know is on top of mind for many business leaders right now. So let's dig into some questions because we've all sort of spent some time together talking about, what does the space need to occupy? Like what are the topics that are top of mind for business leaders today? And I want to start first in a space of saving businesses. So if we really think about, the way that the workforce has changed, COVID-19 has been probably one of the greatest disruptions in a generation. Of course, the PC and the internet, mobile revolution, they've all, of course, created advanced technologies that have tremendous impact on how people work. But the global pandemic may have caused an even greater disruption. We heard Pamela talk about some of the stats that came out of the McKinsey and Lean In survey. I mean, certainly we've seen from the global economy, 5% of the female workforce has left in the last 2 years. Tremendous changes in how we all work. And then where we work too, of course, has changed. Companies with essential manufacturing, distribution, and retail facilities really face an additional challenge of this divided workforce. Some people are in buildings, some people are remote. And so some employers have made some really big saves and very big choices in how they've treated this remote workforce. And so I really want to go to Elena first, because you as an entrepreneur have made some unconventional choices about how you have thought about workplaces and really how you have saved potentially some employees depending on where they work. Can you share with us a little bit about your story?
Yes, I definitely had I found one of my companies during COVID in a very hard position. And I was also, I struggled a lot with some decisions that I needed to make. One of my companies is an office furniture production company. And guess what? Some of the production was happening in Italy, some of the production was happening in China. And those countries were hit first, which meant that our projects were stopped. Our employees were affected, and it was brutal. I needed to make some decisions fast while trying to keep everyone safe, and at the same time making sure that my customers won't really be affected that much, because if you can't really produce furniture for the projects, it cannot be delivered, and it was a nightmare. I definitely made an unexpected decision even for me. We decided to keep all of our employees, but it costed me a lot. I had to sell 2 of my apartments and reinvest all this money back into the company. But that decision allowed us to keep all of our team members. We haven't lost even one of them. We haven't lost even one of our customers or partners, but it was definitely very unconventional, and I don't recommend it. But it's just something that I needed to do, and I needed to do it fast before we could risk losing anyone. And luckily for me, this decision paid off because the company recovered already. And now it's doing pretty well and working on projects up to 5 million square feet. So it's one of the largest projects in the world. But that decision, I don't know if I would make the same decision ever again. It's definitely very risky. I do not recommend it. But at the same time, that was the only decision that we had because banks weren't really cooperating, especially in the timelines that we needed it to happen. So that's my story.
Wow. I mean, and you really articulated what the role of retention plays. And it's so curious the calculation you have to make between the cost of retention and shuttering and retraining, and then sort of bridging with your own personal assets, this workforce that you have made a commitment to. What did that feel like? I mean, was there reciprocity? Were they grateful? I mean, how did that sit with you?
I think I'm really grateful that they took it so well. And again, like no one left, even though I couldn't really promise them that everything's going to be all right. I was trying to make sure that everything's going to be all right, but no one knew. And especially when you have a production site, it's really hard to make sure that people will keep social distancing there because sometimes productions are not built for social distancing. There are certain machines and you cannot really provide the social distancing. So I was trying to make sure that they will be, again, like as safe as possible. And I think I'm really grateful that, they took it the way they took it. And I think they're grateful too, because they obviously know they had families and my decision would not affect just my own employees. It would also affect their families and their kids. And that's where it gets even more stressful for CEO. Luckily for me, my other company was doing pretty well during especially early stages of pandemic, because our market just grew 300% overnight in 1 month. And that definitely helped me a lot with some other costs.
I don't know if you identify as a caretaker, but you certainly operate as an entrepreneur who is a caretaker. So that's it's really beautiful to watch. Ronit, I want to go to you because you have a very different workplace. You don't hold a manufacturing community up. You have a very different kind of workforce. And so I wonder if you have seen moments that maybe help you identify as a caretaker at work, and how you've thought about saving some of your employees during the last 2 years.
Yeah, I actually want to take you to the interesting statement you said about COVID-19 being a crisis. COVID-19 is a worldwide disaster. Whenever we have those worldwide disaster, it is devastating, and it's also an interesting place for opportunities. If you take the previous century, we had World War II. World War II was a disaster, but it also created opportunity for women to get into the workforce. So if you look at the pandemic and what happened now, it actually created really interesting opportunity. And I want to share this kind of funny story. Like the last day we were in the office back then in March, I was too busy doing my work and I was opening the door and nobody was there. It was like a ghost town. Last day at work, last people were kind of grabbing chair and stuff from the table because nobody was sure when we'll come back. And in that moment, I understood that it's probably going to be something that we could not even imagine where it will take us. And I heard someone a year later, I heard someone saying something really impressive. And they said, we had all those technology revolution, we had the internet, we have the mobile phone, all of that brought work to home, right? It created this constant question of work-life balance that we have because now we are available everywhere. But COVID-19, the pandemic, brought our home to work. It brought that perspective that we have life as individuals, and that we have families, we have our needs, we need to take care of people, we are a person outside of work. So the opportunity the pandemic actually brought is the opportunity for us to actually get to this work-life harmony. And if you think about what we can enable with remote work, we can enable people to choose where they want to live. I have a bunch of people in my team that I'm from Seattle, and they They left their family years ago. They moved to Seattle from Chicago and Texas and a bunch of other places. And now they're back home with their families and they enjoy working remote because they have this amazing collaborative platform that allows them to manage their work. So we are in a cloud conference, and the power of the cloud is that it brings us really great tools to collaborate with each other. We are here collaborating over an event. We can collaborate over an execution. I'll give you another example from one of our customers, Roche, early in the pandemic when they finally got those COVID-19 tests. I don't know if you all remember that moment that we heard in the news that we finally get COVID tests. We can do that. They needed to distribute that all around the US in a matter of days. They use Smartsheet. They use our platform that allowed them to do remote work and manage their work. And within a couple of days, they were able to create a whole distribution system that track shipment all around the United States, understand inventory. So if you are out of inventory in California and you have extra stock in New York, that system can actually do that for them and identify. They were able to share the data about how many tests were taken, how many are needed within 4 days in national news. And they were able to do that using our platform and any other type of such platform. And the reason they can do that is that those platforms allow people with no code, no need to be software engineers, no need to hire a bunch of really talented engineers to build your application. You can just configure this, and in a matter of hours or days, you can get your team to do their work very productive. So that's the power. We are empowering. This is an opportunity to actually use this as a place to say, hey, let people live their life and do the work, and it can actually be done very well together.
I love what you said about the innovation that's coming out of a crisis. I mean, it really has been a pressure cooker for so many folks. And I'm a Smartsheet customer. Our company uses it, and so I can attest to sort of the power of asynchronous work, especially in flexible work environments. Like that enables us to be effective and keep people whole at the same time. So there's a real power in the kind of technology accessible now. And so I want to shift a little bit to kind of step back and step out of how people are working and really kind of think about some of the business model evolution that's underway, because not only are we seeing innovation in product and output, but we're seeing innovation in how we access people, how businesses are being built, how revenue streams are changing. Even at my own company, we build flexible, high impact consulting work, which means that people don't have to choose between all or nothing. There's pathways in the middle, and even that is an innovation in how you access talent for the next right decision. And so I want to go next to Jillian. Because certainly Accenture has this really broad view of how business landscape is changing. And I want to think about with you, Jillian, this like shift in business models and the kind of work that's available. We see things like restaurants, coming up with instead of indoor dining, of course, innovating and how you access food and contactless delivery. And you see all of these innovations happening across these various business models that we're ripe for it and ready for it. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how these business models change and how they also change the job roles of this remote workforce.
Yeah. You bring up a great point. And I think, going back to the earlier point about how COVID has underscored the need for work-life balance and has shone a light on that, I think we're seeing the same with kind of what we think of as durable operations, meaning how do companies structure their organizations, their partners, and their people to outmaneuver that uncertainty we're facing and really move to new business models. And that really creates a more resilient culture and workforce. And new technologies, just like we were talking about, can also help businesses increase their market resilience and competitiveness as consumer habits start to shift. So if we think about the retail industry, for example, which was already being disruptive prior to the pandemic with shifting customer demands and more personalized experiences, and now couple that with what COVID has introduced introduced with value chain disruption, depleted inventories, the significant increase in digital and e-commerce. And we're seeing a complete change in business models so that really your business becomes a platform. So instead of following like a linear process of doing business from manufacturer to retail to customers, business now must be in like constant engagement and contact with their customers. And this really changes the jobs that are needed to support that model and how people work. So one example that I've seen is a huge increase in the need for data and analytic capabilities to manage those value streams, really start to curate for customers. I was just talking to a client about this last week and preparing for a workshop all around this. And we really said the outcome of it is to make everyone realize and create the learning journeys for everyone in the company to become a data analyst, regardless of what their current job and role is. And in addition to that, we've been so used to conducting business in person. Now we need to be savvy with digital collaboration tools and become more of technologists. So these types of skills we see really maximize performance. So as those jobs start to shift and, for example, integrating data into your day-to-day job, using new technology tools, we're really finding it's far more effective to reskill your workforce to become and exhibit more of those behaviors and skills than it is to go out and try to source exact talent to fit your need. And your organization's culture is incredibly important in this because it needs to be one that's rooted in continuous learning so that your workforce has access to and is excited by these new types of technologies and tools and capabilities. Then you can start to reskill them on things like customer experience, agile operations, and storytelling. And this way you're creating a larger team of utility players across your company who are both data and digitally fluent.
Yeah, skill. I mean, we could spend a whole hour on skilling, and we should. That would be an absolutely fascinating discussion with you ladies. I'm also so excited that Lisa is here, that you have joined us. Hello, welcome to the stage, my friend. I would love to just welcome you right in, and I'm going to jump to you. Okay, we're gonna put you in the hot seat. Okay, so Lisa, first start with a very brief introduction of your role at NTT. And then the question I'm going to come to you with actually builds on the conversation with Jillian is really around how, and I know you're specializing in healthcare, how are you seeing healthcare business models change among this massive transformation that we're under?
Well, I'm really passionate about that, so I'm excited you asked me that question. So I'm Lisa Esch. I'm Senior Vice President, and I lead innovation and strategy for NTT Data Services in our healthcare provider space. But I've been in healthcare my entire career, from being a clinician to working for startups, working for large healthcare providers, as well as now in the service industry. So we've seen a large transformation in the workforce. And in healthcare in particular, the burden that they've carried with just in the world we lived in the last 2 years, with the burnout and the stress and the trauma happened. Jillian, you were talking about retooling and reskilling people. It's not a larger industry we're seeing this in. How do we take nurses that are so burnt out at the bedside, are still passionate about healthcare, and get them doing something else to reprieve and they need to kind of recover from what they've been through, and the physicians and all the people in healthcare. So the workforce is really transforming, and in healthcare, we saw the drastic reaction to everything. And my cautionary statement around that is, in healthcare, digital can be very dehumanizing. So you can have like 9 portals to go to find it. It's very disconnected and dehumanizing, although we were able to at least get the patients talking to each other. So I'm really passionate about this whole, how do you humanize in this digital experience? And digital isn't just about technology. It's still about people and process and the patient and the clinician. So how do you bring it in a way humanizes how we when it was just so reactionary, we're just trying lives. place is going to continue to change. And there are pockets of clinicians and providers that want to go back to this, but the cat's out of the bag. And people want to do whatever. Usually there's a level of convenience to that, and there's no, like, we've proven it to have to go for an hour, see someone for 10 minutes, and then drive back home and all of that. So we're really seeing that transformation. But we've got to invest in our people and not just our technology, because there's just so much value in that organization or of an industry. And how do you really make the most of it? Digitizing the workforce, the work experience, very cautious to keep it human.
Lisa, whew, okay, so Sama pulled out the quote that also sat with me too in what you just said, was that digitizing is not just about technology, it's about people, and that there really is potential to live inhumane lives if we don't do this in the right way. And I saw also in chat, Annabelle talk about centering women and families in the reconstruction of our workforce. And I just wanted to call that out because, boy, what a big opportunity and challenge. You want to, react to that?
Yeah, it is. I'll dig a little bit deeper into that. So, for example, we're doing a lot around hospital at home. Health at home is not home health, okay? And so I was talking with about, well, how are you going to staff that? You can't even staff in your hospital. He's like, we have nurses lined up to take these jobs. They can work a block of time, and then when they can be done. So it's creating this whole retention strategy they never had 2 years ago. They never would have thought of doing that 2 years ago. So you've really got to start questioning everything we do and rethinking everything we do to how can we really and the technology and the process that we have, not just survive with it. So we out there that middle of the day space when they can work and then they can still balance their families and their needs, and you throw in all the homeschooling and everything else that's going on right now. So I can't imagine having toddlers or grade school children at home right now. Mine are all grown up. I got grandkids. I don't know how they've survived the last 2 years.
Well, I can tell you it's been hard. Yesterday was the first day that all three of my kids went to school since December. So happy to be here with you. And Lisa, thank you for digging in on that, because I think you're really hitting on something that is powerful when you think about equity too. And so I want to double down on this topic. And Elena, I want to come to you next, because you talked about the agency of choice in our workplaces, and where you sit matters, and giving you flexibility and freedom there. And I want to bring that question in a hard way back at you around equity, and talking about, is it fair? Is it fair? Is it fair to have those choices? Is it fair to allow this divided workforce continue? Some are working on site, some are working at home. How do we think about representation and equity in where we work?
It's a great question, and definitely some people might prefer never come back to work ever in their lives, and that's also totally fine. So I think it's really comes to personal preference, and also if your job requires you to even be in the office, or in some cases on the production line, or just being like physically present in again, in the office or wherever you work. So I would say it's fair, and it should be based on the fact if you are needed at work. I can give you an example. Our chief accountant is working right now on her accounting stuff. So she's working by herself. She doesn't really need to talk to anyone in person. She can do everything through Zoom, and she's also taking care of her mother who has some health issues right now, and she needs to be there. I would say it's definitely fair for her to stay at home and work from home, and I don't need her to be in the office. Not now, and maybe not ever, because she's doing her work. She knows what she's doing. She doesn't really need to talk to anyone in person. And even if she'll ever need to, she can choose to send someone else. But if, let's say, you're producing furniture, you physically need to be there to operate this machine. Like there's no way, there are no robots yet who can do it for you. Even if you have all the equipment, you still need to be there and operate these machines. Like you still need to be there. Would it be fair for a company to tell you not to come to work? It would end up in you losing a job. So I think it's really divided workforce is fair based on if you are needed at work and also if you want to, and if not, if you can do your whatever you're doing from home, you do you. One of our best sales people, she had her second son right in the middle of pandemic, and she still became the best. She sold the most out of everyone in the company, while she haven't showed up at work once in that year. It didn't stop her.
Mm-hmm. I think you really distilled it down. Are you needed, and can it be done elsewhere? Okay, done. I love that. Okay, so let's move on, because I know we're running low on time, and I want to get to this last question, which is really about thinking about people. I mean, that's really been an overarching theme of this conversation. Of course, the remote workforce is about people and where and how you do your work. But I want us to all get into the minds of business leaders and thinking about this collaborative, creative culture that they still need to build in this remote environment. You mentioned, and Ronit, the way that you said it was so beautiful about how like home has now come onto our screens, right? Like we get to see the bed in your back room. Like that's actually a beautiful and vulnerable way to work. And so I'm curious from this group, really, what are the areas that company leaders must try to find solutions with this people first mindset so that work can continue and also people can show up as their authentic selves? I mean, that's really been some of our challenges today. So, and we've talked about upskilling, we've talked about, a number of different tactics here. So let's just go around for this sort of last answer. Jillian, I want to go to you first and see if you have thoughts about what business leaders should be considering right now.
Yeah, it's a great question. And even in our own research that we conducted at Accenture, we found that 53% of people who had never worked from home prior to the pandemic now plan to work from home in some capacity moving forward. So really all companies should be evaluating almost a re-entry strategy and how do they think about that and personalize it to their employees. And one of the big things to think about is starting with feasibility as a company, looking across your landscape at your roles and tasks and trying to determine from that what can be done remotely, what can be done in a hybrid environment, what has to remain on site, and what has been and is now automated. It's very similar to how you look at a talent model to evaluate that, and then determine what is the impact to the people that fall into each of those categories, and what investments in technology can you make to make those experiences of those people as equitable as you can, and making sure that a distributed workforce is feeling connected and purposeful, because it's not all or none. All companies, or most companies, I should say, to a degree, will be a blend. And that has an impact on HR policy and total rewards, and needs to be looked at through a lens of equity and inclusion, so that making sure that no environment that someone is in is going to put them at a disadvantage, and that whether in the home or in the office, the experiences you have, your network, the leaders you interact with are exposed to, is managed from a place of equity, and you make space for that regardless of the backdrop. And you mentioned your culture. That needs to support this as well, and you need to be proactive about managing the change. It really comes back to, I think, intentionality around what you do, putting the voice of the employee at the center, and tailoring the experiences that you plan for those employees to a diverse workforce, understanding people have different voices and situations and scenarios that they're going to be facing in this new environment. And even if people don't return physically to the office, they need to be seen just as much as people who are physically in the office. So I really think having an inclusive organizational culture and using technology to your benefit to engage distributed teams is going to be really crucial.
So well said. Thank you. There's some applause for you in the chat. People are agreeing. So thank you for that. Ronit, I want to go to you next. Get into the minds of leaders along, your peers and others who are thinking about this challenge right now, and share with us what's on their mind.
Yeah, I love that. One of our customers had an amazing kind of insight. She's from Delbecki, and what she said was that work is no longer a place, it's an outcome. You start thinking about in that perspective, you are going to measure as a leader and a company the outcome, right? My first job in the industry, I had a punch clock. So I was a software engineer actually, and I punched clock every day. And it created a culture that people were waiting near the clock machine and like waiting for the last minute so they can punch. If you shift your mindset and say, hey, I have a professional workforce, I trust them, I empower them, I give them that grace, because if not, they're probably not doing the work good anyway, right? If I can't trust them. And you look at their outcome, this is where the wins come forward. Some companies have done that for years. GitLab is a good example of a company that worked remotely for ages. And one of the philosophy that I learned from them was to say, hey, when we go through this remote work, we are going through stages. Our first stage is just doing the same thing we have done in the office, but with remote. So we end up having this crazy calendar of meetings all around, and we send those heavy emails and all of that. But the second step is to actually understand, hey, we have a value proposition here. We have an opportunity. We as leaders can actually harness this to do things more efficiently. And then we start moving gradually to collaborative work tools, right? I stop setting meetings. I do work asynchronously. I create this app for my project that I can go and track the work that everybody has done. I create workflows that automatically send notification to people that, hey, I have finished this part of the approval of plans. Go ahead and do the next step. We have a bunch of customers that use our platform for marketing campaigns. And they actually go step by step. They create like the materials and the images and the videos, and then you do that all online, and then they send it to the next step, and the next person get notification, and they get to organize those events online and collaborate with a large amount of teams. It could be creative teams and marketing teams and sales team and finance team that they need for that event, and all can be done online. So it is us as leaders changing our mindset and finding that value.
I love that. I mean, there is so much courage in what you all have talked about. We've talked about trust and purpose. I just adore that. We have a concept at my company called highest and best use, which is about putting people into the right spaces, given their containers of time. And it sounds like those are principles that you all live by and lead by in your organization. So it's just a real privilege to learn from you. If folks in the audience have takeaways, things that you really will take back to your own organizations, put that in chat. I'd love to hear what really resonated with you out of this discussion, because I think that there was a lot of things that I learned that I'd love to take away to even my organization and our clients. So thank you all for spending your time with us talking about reinventing the remote workforce and dreaming about a new future of work that includes all of us. So with that, I'd love Patty to bring it back up on stage, and we will see our time.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh,
Thank
that
you,
was
everybody.
wow. That was so powerful. And I love this. I have such great quotes here, but one of them, work is no longer a place, it's an outcome. I just love that. So thank you so much for such beautiful moderation, Brea. Unbelievable, really great questions. And I know that all of our audience really appreciated all that all of you had to say. So thank you all for being here. And I know you'll go out in the audience now, but just know that I've captured this. And so be sure to go back and look at that visual afterwards, because all the notes of what some of the key concepts that you said are in there. So thank you again. Thanks, Brea.